2 years of pleasing a fake husband? He only loves his first love. I walk into an arranged marriage with a billionaire. Only two. Discover we share A-squared identity. The sweetest revenge, success, and true love.
Family, determined to be his perfect wife. Married for 2 years. He was gentle and caring, never made me suffer. Apart from never being intimate with me, he was almost the perfect husband. Until that day, when I brought our marriage certificate to buy our dream house. Mrs. Palmer, the system isn't pulling up your marriage registration record. What do you mean by that? Probably just a system error. You can confirm it directly at City Hall. I held that marriage certificate, my fingers trembling. A voice inside me kept saying, something must be wrong. Ma'am, the document you've presented is counterfeit. Our records show no marriage registration whatsoever between you and Mr. Colin Palmer. This can't be. If you believe you've been deceived, it's best to report the matter to the authorities. That marriage certificate I treasured for 2 years was fake. The man I thought I'd spend my life with had woven an enormous lie. I couldn't accept it. I went to his office to confront him. I rounded the corner and stopped. Through a glass wall, I saw Colin passionately kissing a woman. His first love, Millie Russell. You still haven't told her, have you? About us?
I'm a coward. When you left to pursue your career abroad, I was heartbroken. Then Brinley came along. She reminded me so much of you that I finally felt alive again.
So you made her my substitute? Forged a marriage certificate to make her believe you were legally bound? Colin, you really are something.
Yes, I'm greedy. I want your fire, and I want her gentleness. I even let myself imagine how perfect it would be if the two of you could
coexist peacefully? Colin, you really are delusional. Who wants to coexist with a substitute? But I am curious. Does she know she's just a counterfeit?
She won't ever know. She's so naive, never questions a thing. She has no idea you're even pregnant with my child.
Then when are you going to tell her? You can't expect me to just wait around forever. Colin, I don't have the patience to play this game with you.
I'll figure something out. Just give me a little more time.
In that moment, I felt like a complete and utter joke. I turned and walked away. Tears filled my eyes. I tilted my head up and took a deep breath, stubbornly refusing to let them fall. Then I dialed a number I hadn't called in 2 years. Dad, I've changed my mind. Tell the Moores. My answer is yes. From today on, the Brinley who had humbled herself for love was dead. 3 months later, I returned to Bleon, invited to the Knight family's annual charity gala. Half of Bleon's elite had gathered there. I had intended to keep a low profile, dismissing the bodyguards the Knight family's butler, Caden, had arranged for me. But even in the simplest attire, I still drew everyone's attention. Isn't that Brinley Shaw? Oh my God, what is she doing here? I heard Colin dumped her after she cheated on him. It was a whole spectacle. How does she still have the nerve to show up? Across the hall, Colin was mingling with guests, his arms strapped around Millie's waist. Hearing the commotion, he turned and looked over. Colin pushed through the crowd and rushed right up to me, firing one accusation after another.
What are you doing here? And why did you disappear without a single word? Do you know how much time and money I spent trying to find you? Tell me you didn't actually throw me away for someone else? Like all those whispers claim.
His accusation drew every gaze in the hall towards me, all filled with judgment and anticipation for a spectacle. Millie, who had rushed after him, quickly grabbed Colin's arm and gently tried to soothe him. Colin, please, calm down. Talk this through. Miss Shaw must have had her reasons for vanishing without a word. Millie turned to me, her face full of feigned sympathy. Miss Shaw, I understand if you still carry feelings for Colin, but you should move on. Disappearing and then showing up again like this, surely it only makes things harder for everyone. Her words, disguised as soothing counsel, only painted me as a desperate clinger. The whispers around us grew sharper and more merciless. Exactly. What is she after, hanging around here like this when Colin has already moved on? Millie is being awfully generous. If it were me, I would have snapped by now. This is the Knight family's event. They don't just let anyone wander in. Did she slip past security? Someone needs to toss her out.
Brinley, I know you regret leaving me. Just apologize. Out of respect for our past, I could put in a word with Mrs. Knight and help you stay.
I didn't acknowledge him at all. Instead, I picked up my glass and took a sip. Just then, a stocky middle-aged man walked over. He appeared to be the assistant to the event organizer.
Miss, this is a private event. If you don't have an invitation, I'll have to ask you to leave.
Brinley, you'd really rather be tossed out like this than give me an answer? Or even an apology?
Miss Shaw, be sensible. Apologize to Colin. With all these eyes on you, why put yourself through more shame? Everyone was waiting to see me humiliated, but I lifted my gaze, looking past Colin and Millie toward the figure strolling quickly toward us.
What is going on here?
The moment Caden appeared, everyone fell silent.
Mrs. Shaw, I deeply apologize for disrespect you've endured. The fault is entirely mine for failing to discipline my staff. Please forgive this lapse.
He turned to Matthew, his voice turning icy.
Who gave you the right to disgrace the Knight family in front of everyone? Mrs. Knight has always taught us to treat every guest with respect. Did you assume our invitations were handed out carelessly, or that our security was too lax for you to take seriously?
With every word Caden spoke, Matthew's face grew paler.
Mrs. Shaw, please forgive this embarrassment. I'll deal with him immediately. Would you prefer to rest in the VIP lounge, or?
I'll go along with whatever arrangements Mrs. Knightle has made.
Understood. The lounge has been set with refreshments. Mrs. Knight was just speaking of you.
His words drew another collective gasp. No one could believe that Mrs. Knight, the undisputed queen of Bleon's real estate world, a woman even the mayor referred to, was personally hosting me. Just as Caden was leading me toward the staircase, Matthew suddenly dropped to his knees.
Miss Shaw, please, accept my apologies for my earlier rudeness. Please, grant me mercy just this once!
You've broken the family rules. That's why you're fired. Not because of Miss Shaw.
Escape him out. Notify HR. His employment is terminated and he will never be rehired.
I didn't slow my steps. I didn't even look back. I made my way straight to the second floor VIP lounge. I pushed open the door. Inside sat a tall, striking man with sharp brows and piercing eyes. I looked up instinctively and found him looking right back at me. His name was Austin Moore, my new husband. He'd been overseas for 3 months. This was the first time we'd seen each other since our marriage. His appearance, his commanding aura, his physique, all of it was far superior to Colin's in every possible way. Austin and I stood there, staring at each other in silence. Before either of us could say a word, a sudden commotion came from the doorway. Several business partners rushed in, eagerly crowding around Austin to curry favor.
Mr. Moore, we've been waiting anxiously for your arrival.
You're always occupied with work. It's rare to catch a glimpse of you.
I was immediately pushed aside. Fortunately, Mrs. Knight stepped forward just in time to smooth things over.
Mr. Moore will be spending plenty of time with you today, so there's no need to hurry. Please, take a seat and have some tea first.
She walked over, pulled me back from the sidelines, and introduced me to everyone.
This is Ms. Brinley Shaw. She's here today to share some of her business insights with you.
But the moment my name was spoken, it drew a wave of mocking laughter.
Mrs. Shaw, you are indeed easy on the eyes, but your judgment, perhaps not as impressive. You cut ties with your own family for a man, becoming nothing but a subject of ridicule in Blairin. If you're that desperate for a man's approval, maybe you should stick to family matters instead of meddling in business.
Mr. Simpson!
What surprised me was that Austin walked slowly toward me, reached out and brushed a strand of hair back behind my ear, then slipped an arm naturally around my waist.
So, in your opinion, Mr. Simpson, my wife doesn't measure up to your standards?
I saw Oliver's face instantly fill with unease.
Mrs. Moore, my apologies. Mr. Moore, they say you have no interest in women, but clearly you have exquisite taste. You prefer the beautiful ones.
Though he was offering a compliment, his eyes clearly conveyed subtle contempt. Austin didn't argue. Instead, he studied me with interest, clearly curious about how I would handle the situation. I sneered inwardly, but kept a perfectly measured smile on my face.
Mr. Simpson, your words remind me of something. I once heard that some influential businessmen have a fondness for keeping several young women at once. They are really shameless. Surely you've heard such rumors too?
Oliver's face went white instantly. His habit of keeping mistresses was an open secret in our circle. My remark, though vague on the surface, was a clear jab at him. But with Austin standing beside me, he dared not lash out. Instead of speculating about others, wouldn't it be wiser to tend to your own affairs? You wouldn't want your reputation to go up in flames one day. I caught a flicker of admiration in Austin's eyes.
All right, everyone, let's not take it too seriously. Let's sit down. No need to crowd around.
Oliver looked stiff and displeased, but he sat down, not daring to retort. Only then did Austin lean closer, whispering in my ear,
Quite the impression you've made, my dear wife.
"Like what you saw?" Austin only smirked, deciding not to reply. Instead, he gripped my waist even tighter. Austin was hardly ever seen at social events like this, so his appearance today drew a flood of people eager to strike up conversations. I sat quietly at his side, playing the role of the doodle ornament. I finally couldn't sit still any longer.
Don't take too long. Come back soon.
I nodded and left the lounge. Just as I stepped out of the restroom, a figure reeking of alcohol staggered into my path.
Brinley.
Mr. Palmer, please control yourself.
Brinley, I've realized how wrong I was. Give me another chance. I can't do without you. These 3 months apart, I've missed you so much I feel like I'm going mad.
Enough. I don't want to hear any more of your nonsense. Colin, listen. We're done. Stay away from me, or I promise you'll regret it.
But the drunken Colin suddenly lunged forward, trying to grab me, even trying to kiss me.
Brinley, just give me one more chance, please.
Get lost!
I sidestepped his embrace and drove the heel of my shoe into his abdomen with all the force I could muster. He let out a cry of pain, bending over and clutching his stomach, but I didn't give him time to recover. My other foot followed, aimed precisely between his legs. He collapsed on the floor, curling up miserably, cold sweat soaking through his shirt. He couldn't even speak. A few guests nearby were drawn by the commotion, their eyes filled with shock. Colin, take this as your warning. If you dare try this again, you'll regret it far more than you do now. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked away. What I didn't know was that Austin, having just finished his conversation, had witnessed the entire scene. He stood not far away, a knowing smile playing at the corner of his lip. As the banquet wound down and guests began to leave, I had just reached the exit when a sleek black Maybach pulled up to block my way. The window rolled down, revealing Austin's striking face.
Get in.
Mr. Moore, I have my own car.
I already had it sent back. Now get in.
I want to return to my own place.
Your place? Brinley, we're married. That means we're supposed to live together. No buts. I prepared our new home 3 months ago. Now, you're coming back with me.
His tone was domineering, yet strangely inoffensive. I looked into his deep eyes and fell silent for a few seconds. I knew Austin never made empty threats, and besides, I really did need a fresh start. I took a deep breath, opened the car door, and slid inside.
Drive.
The black Maybach slipped silently into traffic, and finally stopped before a villa halfway up the mountain.
He circled around and opened the door for me. I stepped out and looked up at the enormous building before me.
From today onward, this is your home.
Under the glow of the lights, his profile was striking, almost godlike in its perfection. I nodded and followed him inside.
The door had barely clicked shut. Austin suddenly turned around. He planted one hand against the door behind me, trapping me between himself and the wood panel. I was so nervous I didn't know what to do.
You weren't this reserved at the banquet, my dear wife. What's wrong? Nervous now that you're in your own home? Don't you think you've forgotten there's still one thing we haven't done?
What thing?
What newlyweds are supposed to do on their wedding night. We've been married 3 months now. Don't you think it's time we made up for it?
My face instantly flushed, my heart pounding so fast it felt like it might leap out of my throat. So this was his plan all along, bringing me home.
Don't move.
The next second, he lowered his head and kissed me, and I forgot to breathe. I had to admit, Austin was undeniably attractive. I was tempted, sure, but also intimidated. A man of his stature was not someone I wanted to provoke. I averted my gaze and tried to keep my voice as steady as possible. Mr. Moore, since this is a marriage of convenience, I think we should set some basic terms.
Oh? Go ahead. I'm listening.
First, this marriage serves business purposes only. We don't interfere in each other's private lives. Second, we keep our finances separate. Neither touches the other's assets. Third, if this partnership ever ends, we part on good terms. No entanglement.
I watched him nervously, but he just let out a low, quiet laugh.
Don't you think you're being a little too cold towards me? Remember, we're legally husband and wife now.
You should understand, there's nothing between us. This is just a business arrangement. I don't want unnecessary
trouble. You think I'd be trouble?
In any case, that's settled.
Fine. As you wish, my dear wife. However, there are still formalities to address. We should visit your father sometime next week. The wedding also needs to be properly arranged.
Mr. Moore, the purpose of this alliance has already been fulfilled. Informing our families is enough. A wedding ceremony isn't really necessary, is it?
Even if it's just a marriage of convenience, maintaining appearances in front of our elders is part of our responsibility.
He said it so naturally, as if this marriage was always meant to be celebrated with great fanfare. My resistance suddenly seemed like I was hiding something. I stared into his deep eyes, searching for any trace of jest or calculation. But his gaze was open and honest, even carrying a sense of earnest conviction. Watching his back as he walked up the stairs, my heart inexplicably beat faster. What exactly was Austin after, with all this attention that went far beyond a mere business arrangement? Soon it was the day to visit the Shaw mansion. Austin's car pulled up smoothly at the gate. I was about to unbuckle my seatbelt and get out, but Austin took hold of my hand. "What are you doing?" He laced his fingers through mine.
In front of your family, we've got to look convincing. You wouldn't want your father getting the idea we can't stand each other, right?
I shot him an exasperated glare, but let him hold my hand. No harm in touching a little, right? My father, Brandon Shaw, came out from the courtyard to greet us.
Sweetheart, come here. Let me see if you've lost weight.
Dad, I'm back.
Austin stepped forward, presenting the gift box in both hands.
Mr. Shaw, this is my first visit. I brought a small token. Please accept it.
That's very kind of you. My daughter's got a stubborn streak. If she gives you trouble, I hope you'll let it slide.
My father didn't open the gift right away. Instead, he looked Austin up and down. I knew those polite words were really a father testing his son-in-law.
You're too kind. Brinley is incredibly thoughtful. I'm the lucky one to have her as my wife. I'll take good care of her, and I'll never let anyone hurt her.
My father clapped Austin warmly on the shoulder and led us toward the main hall. I trailed behind, watching Austin's respectful demeanor before my father. A strange feeling stirred in my chest. This man, who could dominate boardrooms and build empires, was here showing such patience and courtesy, like any ordinary son-in-law intent on earning his father-in-law's approval. After the family dinner ended, my father walked us to the door and told Austin to take good care of me. We said goodbye to the Shaws and returned to the villa. Then, out of nowhere, Austin extended an unexpected invitation.
The pool is freshly maintained. Want to give it a try?
This was a marriage of convenience. I couldn't always put myself in a weak position. Refusing would only make it look like I was scared of him. I might as well strike first and show him I wasn't someone to be messed with. Fine. Minutes later, dressed in my swimsuit, I stepped out to the pool. Austin was already there. A loose white towel clung precariously at his hips. Beads of water traced the dips of his muscles. I fought to keep my composure.
You've been watching me for 3 minutes straight.
Have I? I rose on my toes and let my fingertips skim across his hard abdomen.
With a body like this, you could easily walk a runway. Though I have to say, touching it feels even better. His Adam's apple shifted with a swallow. He reached for my wrist, but I slipped away with a quick flick and turned to leave. Back in my room, I closed the door and slapped my burning cheeks. Stay alert. Colin had once been just as gentle and caring. Look how that ended. This was a marriage of convenience. I could never let myself fall. I thought the whole poolside teasing incident was behind us. I didn't expect him to find a way to get back at me. That night, I returned to the villa. The moment I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. Austin stood in the living room, bare-chested, his muscles rippling as he moved through his weight training, sweat tracing down the ridges of his back. Suddenly, a sharp metallic clang spattered the quiet. The dumbbells slipped from his grip and crashed to the floor. Careful!
My body acted on instinct, hurrying forward to steady him. But before I reached the weights, strong arms swept me close. My spine pressed against his burning chest. Sweat from his skin seeped through my thin blouse.
I'm exhausted. Let's rest a little.
I tried to push him away, but my palm landed right on his ABS, firm and smooth. Nah, I couldn't let him win every time. I twisted sharply, driving my knee into his side, then rolled him flat onto the yoga mat. I settled astride his waist, grabbing his arm. Mr. Moore, playing at being helpless with muscles like these? My hand slid down the length of his arm, fingertips tracing every contour until I felt his body tensely under my touch. The intensity in his stare thickened, fierce and unyielding. With a swift motion, he reversed their positions, pinning me beneath him against the mat. His arms braced on either side of my head, his face lowering until the bridge of his nose hovered a breath from mine.
Is just touching enough for you?
His abs pressed against my waist, the heat seeping through the fabric. Flustered and angry, I instinctively drove my knee towards his stomach. You!
But he was quicker. He caught my ankle in his grip.
Let go of me!
Austin didn't let go. Instead, he leaned even closer. I stared at his face, inches from me, my mind going completely blank. Yet he didn't kiss me. Instead, he reached out and gently plucked a feather from my hair.
There's something in your hair.
Austin straightened and looked down at me.
So, are you planning to move in down there?
The remark jolted me back to myself. Color rushed to my cheeks, creeping hot all the way to my ears. I scrambled up, smoothing my rumpled blouse with quick, embarrassed motions, then shot him a glare.
You did that on purpose!
What do you mean? You're the one who couldn't stop staring at me while I worked out, and then went diving straight into my arms.
I am not staring at you. I was just walking past. And why on earth are you working out in the living room instead of using the gym? What's wrong with you?
The AC in the gym broke.
The AC is broken? Why does this place have so many issues? Maybe you should think about getting a new villa altogether. I stopped engaging him and escaped upstairs without looking back. I closed the door and leaned against it, gasping for air. There was no denying it, any woman would have been shaken by that kind of lethal charm and physique. Austin knew exactly what he was doing. He reveled in watching me lose composure. My thoughts were a tangled mess. Since walking away from Colin, I had come to understand one truth. No amount of sweet affection could rival the pull of ambition. Tomorrow's business gala, I had to bring my best. The following evening, I arrived in a custom black mermaid gown, making my debut as CEO of Vantage Path Realty. Across the room, Colin arrived with Millie. His gaze locked on me the moment he entered. I paid no mind to the lingering looks. I held my champagne glass lightly and stood at the terrace's edge.
Mrs. Shaw, are you all by yourself?
I turned, my gaze falling on a middle-aged man with a sagging belly and an oily grin. His eyes rolled over me with a greasy boldness.
Running a company of that scale must be exhausting for someone as young as you.
You're flattering me. Vantage Path thrives because of the team behind it.
What team can measure up to a dependable man? If you were with me, you wouldn't have to work so hard.
The conversation dimmed, my expression chilled. I'm afraid you've mistaken me. A woman of my league is nowhere near within your reach.
Ha! Everything has a price, Miss Shaw. Just say the number, stay by my side, and the entire Scott Group could be yours.
His hand lifted, thick fingers reaching to pinch my chin. A brutal smack shattered the air. Mr. Scott clutched his burning cheek, his eyes flashing with shock before twisting into rage.
You dared to slap me?
What's wrong with that? Look at yourself. Pathetic, oily, and shameless. Mr. Scott's face contorted as he rolled up his sleeves, until someone abruptly stepped between them. Colin blocked his path.
Mr. Scott, laying hands on a woman hardly suits a gentleman.
Mr. Palmer? I didn't expect you to play the hero.
Colin probably never realized that his little heroic rescue was nothing but a joke in everyone else's eyes.
With Palmer Group stock in freefall, you still have the nerve to meddle? Better worry about your own crumbling empire first.
Colin's face twisted crimson, his fists balling so tightly his knuckles whitened. A sharp retort hovered on his tongue, but the memory of his company's precarious state silenced him.
And you. Don't fool yourself into thinking a pretty face makes you exceptional. At the end of the day, you're just a woman. What could you possibly accomplish, you pathetic whore?
Say that again, I dare you.
Before the insult could leave his mouth, my leg snapped out, striking the back of his knee. He crumpled with a startled cry. In one swift motion, I seized his tie and yanked him down further, pressing his cheek against the floor. I'll make sure you learn what respect really means. The guests were still recovering from the drama when a stir rippled through the entrance of the banquet hall. Austin strode in, surrounded by a team of bodyguards. His eyes locked onto the disheveled Mr. Scott on the floor, and then onto me.
Mr. Moore is here.
Austin walked straight to me. He simply took off his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders. Then, his gaze cut toward Mr. Scott like a blade.
Mr. Moore, all a misunderstanding.
Throw him out. Notify legal. Starting today, the Moore Group will fully attack every single project of Scott Group Real Estate.
Mr. Scott turned Asian, dragged away mercilessly, his pleas fading into the distance. How did you get here?
You're here, so I came.
Austin swept his gaze across the entire hall.
My wife, Brinley. My wife and I have a very good relationship. I advise anyone with ulterior motives to stop spreading rumors with their clumsy tactics. I came today to make sure everyone knows, anyone who dares to touch my wife is making an enemy of the Moore Group. You will bear the consequences.
As soon as he finished, the seasoned businessmen in the room understood immediately. One by one, they came forward to curry favor with me. Even Colin looked my way, his expression complicated.
Remember how your throat used to get bad every summer? I had someone make you honey lemon tea. Would you like me to? Spare yourself the trouble, Mr. Palmer. I'll take care of my own wife. Instead, why don't you focus on your own? Oh, right. The woman beside you. She's not actually Mrs. Palmer yet, isn't she?
Millie's face went pale instantly. Colin looked as if he'd been struck by lightning.
Mr. Palmer, my husband doesn't enjoy socializing. We'll take our leave.
Ignoring the embarrassment written all over Colin's face, I took Austin's arm and walked away.
After the gala ended, I was still confused. Why would a man as ruthless and decisive as Austin treat me so well? There had to be a reason. Tonight, I decided to search his study for answers. I tiptoed into Austin's study and searched every drawer and shelf. I found nothing. Then, at the farthest corner of the study, my fingers brushed against a loose wooden panel. I pressed it gently, and a hidden compartment sprang open. The hidden compartment held a single scroll, carefully wrapped. I unfolded it and my eyes flew wide in shock. These were my early sketches from the National Design Competition in my sophomore year. On the night of the exhibition, a fire had devoured my booth, reducing every original to ash. I had resigned myself to losing them forever. Yet here they were, perfectly preserved in Austin's study. His voice came from behind me, sudden and cold.
What are you looking for?
In a panic, I shoved the drawer shut and spun around.
Nothing, I was just looking around.
Enjoying yourself in my study?
Only then did I realize I was still clutching the rolled sketches. I hastily tucked them behind my back.
What are you holding?
I stiffened my spine and held the sketches out defiantly, hiding my sketches. Don't you think you owe me an explanation?
I found them by chance. They had a certain spark. Thought they might tie in with a project at Moore Group.
Oh? Since when do you pay attention to university students' designs?
Anything with potential tends to draw my attention.
I rolled the sketches and pressed them firmly against his chest, lifting my chin. I just find it strange that the designs you admire happen to all belong to me. Isn't that quite a coincidence? His gaze dropped to my hand against him. His Adam jawbone bobbed. Then, without warning, he closed the distance. I stumbled back until the edge of the desk stopped my retreat.
It does feel like quite the coincidence. Tell me, Brinley, are you doubting me?
I was
only asking?
I pushed past him and practically fled the study, back to my bedroom. I closed the door and pressed my back against the cool wood, my heart racing. Why had he hidden my university sketches in his secret compartment? What was he really after?
Troubled and uncertain, I dialed my father's number.
Dad, I need to ask you something. What's really behind this arranged marriage to Austin? After a moment of silence on the other end of the line, my father finally spoke slowly.
That winter, Austin's mother was in a devastating car accident. Your mother risked her life in the pouring rain to save her. Out of gratitude, the Moores proposed a marriage alliance between the two families. You're my only daughter, and the only fitting partner they could offer was their youngest son, Austin. All these years, the Moores never pursued any other match for Austin because they've been waiting for you.
Even when you were with Colin, Austin's father came to me personally. He said that if you ever changed your mind, the arrangement would still be honored.
The call ended. I leaned back against the sofa. Maybe Austin's gentleness towards me, his patience, his indulgence, wasn't affection at all, but repayment of a debt. A knot tightened in my chest. I went to the kitchen to find a drink. I had just pulled open the cabinet when a deep voice came from behind.
Brinley,
Why aren't you in bed?
I heard some noise. Want a drink? Let's go to the rooftop. The breeze will do you good.
The rooftop garden was alive with roses. Austin uncorked the bottle and poured a glass. I raised mine and downed it in a single gulp.
Is this about Colin?
Do you honestly think I'd drink myself still over an ex? I ignored him and downed several more glasses. The alcohol hit me. My cheeks burned.
Colin's a bastard, and Millie's no better. Two shameless bastards, and you're an idiot! Out of all the women you could have chosen, why on earth did you marry me?
Austin was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, he spoke.
Because